Welcome to Valley Newsline for the week of April 29th, 2007. Hello, I'm your host, Ron Whitlock. All over the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas and across the entire state of Texas, campaign signs in yards for school board, city commission, city council, and townships, at least in the case of South Padre Island. So wherever you live here in Greater South Texas, you need to be aware of the fact that early voting primarily is going to be starting tomorrow, the 30th of April. For most of these communities, as far as we understand, especially in the city of McAllen, because that's the race we're going to be focusing on during this edition of our program. And in that particular regard, we have two candidates running for city council in the Palm City. We have John Ingram, who is the incumbent, and Don Medina, who is the challenger, and we're going to let you hear from them in just a moment. But first of all, we want to go to our continuing coverage on the Children's Health Insurance Program. Why is it important? Well, because $300 million out of the $500 million comes to the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas and the border region out of the entire state of Texas. And as you know, by being a viewer, of course, on last week's program, we had Texas Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst, and he responded to my question of whether the Lieutenant Governor supports return to the 12-month Children's Health Insurance Program enrollment period, since an estimated 200,000 children in Texas, mainly here in South Texas, lost their coverage when re-enrollment was mandated every 6 months. And we went to him to get the quote, and his quote was, "Look and see is what we want to do if we can come up with a system that will provide continuous coverage." That would, of course, provide also the improvement not only from the 12-month period, but continuous is better than 12 months. So we were very excited by asking the Lieutenant Governor that question and to get his response on the floor of the Texas Senate. Governor, specifically the emergency rooms at Edinburgh Children's Hospital in the Rio Grande Valley, South Texas, and the nearby Doctors Hospital in Renaissance, they're losing millions of dollars in emergency care they're providing to children and working families who are taking them to the ER for emergency care because they've fallen off when it went to a 6-month enrollment as opposed to a 1-year enrollment. Does this mean that you're in support of a 12-month enrollment as opposed to a 6, because almost 200,000 children fell off CHIP when it moved from 12 months to 6-month enrollment?
I don't know whether or not the children that you're describing were eligible for CHIP or not.
According to these hospitals, they were.
Well, then they should be covered. Again, I support all children eligible for the CHIP program to be covered by the CHIP program. So I think the most productive is to look and see if we can come up with a system where we've got continuous coverage for those that are eligible under our guidelines, which is 200% of the federal poverty level.
We asked him for a follow-up and a clarification, so we received it via email. He said that he is wanting to look toward moving the debate from the 6-month versus 12-month to trying to come up with some kind of a system, as you heard him say, that would provide for continuous eligibility with, here's the clarification, periodic monitoring through something like computerized status eligibility checks. This is still very conceptual now, coming from Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, how it might work, but it would ensure that eligible children receive their children's health insurance benefit. We also talked to, via email, the senator for the Valley and the Valley County and Starr County out of Laredo, Judith Zaffarini. You saw her standing beside Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst there on the Senate floor during our banter back and forth. Her quote is, "Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst always has been a strong supporter and champion of children. I, Senator Zaffarini, am delighted that he expressed strong support for continuous coverage of the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP. State health services suffered when the coverage period for children's Medicaid and CHIP was reduced from 1 year to 6 months in 2003. Coupled with a considerable loss in funding, enrollment in both state health service programs that serve low-income children and working parents fell significantly, and approximately 300,000 children lost children's Medicaid and CHIP coverage. I guess you get 100,000 more when you build in Medicaid into the equation. My hope is that the state will adopt a plan to ensure that no child suffers from the loss of essential health coverage and is left ineligible for care. Once more, children's Medicaid and CHIP both should reflect a 12-month continuous eligibility for enrollment. That from Senator Judith Zaffirini, whose picture you saw on the screen while I read her email. Senator Eddie Lucio, we asked for a quote for the program today. This is what he told us via email. As you know, Ron, I continue to support any efforts to cover all children eligible for CHIP or Medicaid, as well as extending the continuous enrollment period for 6 to 12 months. I, Eddie Lucio, am in favor of most of the provisions of the CHIP House bill. However, I'm waiting for the leadership on the Senate side to act. I still do not have a sense of whether the leadership in the Senate will support the House bill in its current form, or if there will be efforts to further extend or reduce certain provisions. The bill is still in the Senate Finance Committee, and the members discuss re-enrollment at this moment. If the Lieutenant Governor supports returning to the 12-month CHIP enrollment period, there will not be any need to offer an amendment to the bill. Senator Lucio told me via cell phone that he is drafting such an amendment to the House-passed CHIP bill, which would add the continuous eligibility validation system that Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst suggested to you and I during the interview on the Senate floor at the state capitol. So, fellas, how important is the Children's Health Insurance Program to the Rio Grande Valley?
Well, obviously, Ron, these benefits are very important to the children of South Texas and to the hospitals that serve them and to the people who try to use our emergency rooms. And it's encouraging to see that Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst and other senators and representatives recognize the problem and are going to do something to address it.
I do have a strong affinity with CHIP. My good friend Ken Benson, our congressman from Houston, Texas, authored part of the federal legislation to provide CHIP programs for the United States. And also because of my work with the Hidalgo County Precinct Number 2 County Commissioner Tito Palacios and working with El Milagro Clinic was very important to partner with the city of McAllen to provide the CHIPs on there. And
what seems to be lost, Don and John, is the fact that there are other unintended circumstances that prevailed and occurred after this one little change was made of enrollment going from 12-month yearly to a 6-month, twice a year situation. Now when they go, those bills go to their employer, such as Vanity Fair in Mission, which now that plan has been placed on the potential close down list because those costs are being reflected back to the profitability of that cut and sew plan in Mission. Sure that the Texas Senate, Texas House, when they made these changes, did not intend to try to cost jobs in Mission, Texas. But that's one of the unintended circumstances that involved what they did while cutting back CHIP enrollment capability.
Many working families still qualify for CHIP, and any type of deterrent to get people not having to come back every 6 months, of course, affected that. El Milagro Clinic was an area that was a sponsor that enrolled a lot of children, not just in McAllen, but for Hidalgo County. That's why I think it's very important for our working families.
Another thing, Mr. Ingram, that $300 million that goes to cover CHIP children, provide their care, who gets those dollars? Well, the doctors who live in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, the hospitals and clinics who provide the service. So that's money that goes into the economy in the Rio Grande Valley and helps maintain the quality of the healthcare infrastructure here in greater South Texas.
Well, I think that's one of those things that can happen when you change legislation like that, and it happens. I don't deal with it as a city commissioner, but I know sometimes in the city of McAllen we do things and there are unintended consequences. It's just fortunate that the Lieutenant Governor and others have recognized the problem and are going to address it.
And the point is, both of these guys, one's currently sitting on the city commission, City of McAllen, one wants to take that job in the election cycle. They understand, as they just verbalized to you and I, they have an understanding and comprehension that the vote that they're going to take, when and if they serve on the McAllen City Commission, is going to have circumstances upon that vote. Guys, let's get into your race in particular. Now, as the challenger, why do you think you need to unseat John Ingram, who's running for re-election, Don Medina?
As my opponent will say that I don't have a degree, that's what makes him as more qualified. I beg to differ. I think practical experience, my 11 years of local and county government experience working with nonprofits throughout the Rio Grande Valley has helped me understand some of the needs in our city. Our district, if you know, Ron,
When you
is
say you don't have a degree, that means you don't have a college degree?
I don't have a college degree. I have a high school degree. I have 96 hours of college credit from Indiana University, where I grew up. My opponent will also say I'm from Indiana, but I've been here for 20 years. I understand what the needs of the city are and of the region, which is important. And one of the things that I think is very, very crucial in our district, which is the most diverse district of the city, because it starts from La Paloma in the south all the way north to Bill Shoe Park, is important to understand that the needs of businesses, economic development, and social services.
Now, Commissioner Ingram, your response.
Well,
He wants your job.
Well,
Why shouldn't he have it?
I think that's important for the political process. I encourage anyone to run for office. I just feel that in the 2 years I've been city commissioner, I've done a responsible job, and that I'm best qualified based upon my education and my experience as a commissioner to do the work.
One of the biggest issues that most of the citizens that I talk to in the city of McAllen are concerned about is the potential unionization of the fire and police departments in the city of McAllen. And you indicated to me, Mr. Medina, that you're all in favor of unionization by virtue of the fact that you were a member of the Allied Industrial Workers Union Local 236 in Union City, Indiana.
That is correct.
Okay, that's the primary reason you think that unionization is a good thing, and that you think that ought to occur in the city of McAllen.
You know, this state of Texas was the last right-to-work state in our union. But unions are made of working families. Unions support Congressman Lloyd Doggett. Lloyd Doggett supports unions. I do as well, because these are made of the working families in our community. I'm not going to be endorsed by the SEIU that my opponent calls a special interest. I call a special interest as business people.
You're not going to be endorsed by
I'm not going to be endorsed by SEIU because I want an employee.
Even though you're pro-union?
Because I believe in an employee advisory committee to head off some of the problems we have with our police unions, and that we will probably have if the current city commission continues with being anti-union and not wanting to have employee rights out there. We need to raise our retirement from 6 to 7% for our employees, not just for our police officers, as has been indicated in 5 ads that were paid by public money to attack a union president. It's for 6 to 7% across the board for Parks Department, Public Works, Public Utilities, for the people that protect us during hurricanes and inclement weather. These are the people that are out there picking up our garbage when we're home on holidays. It's important that we understand what a public employee does and what we need to do to take care of our employees.
My opponent is distorting the facts. He's said several times, my opponent will say, and I haven't said anything yet. First of all, I don't agree. I think the city is not anti-union. Second, he wants to raise, but to raise retirement benefits from 6 to 7% creates an $8 million liability to the city. When a police officer contributes to his retirement plan, or he puts in 6%, the city matches at 12%. Now, when I was working in private industry in Houston as an auditor, I put in 3%, and the corporation I worked for put in 2%. So the police have a pretty good deal with their retirement benefits. The one thing Don won't tell you is how he's going to pay for these this increase in benefits. How are you going to pay for it, Don?
You know, earlier in a forum where we discussed with the Rotary Club that John belongs to, he mentioned that it's hard to try to balance our budget. We have museums, we have other things we need to pay for. I think a public employee is worth a lot more than a museum. That's what's important to us.
But if you have a union situation within your police and fire, aren't you creating 2 classes of employees within the city of McAllen?
I think that remember, this is not 6 to 7% for just police officers. This is across the board for all the employees. And my opponent will say, and every time I say that is because it's written in paper and it has been published. That's the only reason I say that. And the 3% increase of cost of living does not cover insurance rates, and definitely does not cost the increase in gasoline, and doesn't also cover the cost of insurance rates when they go up.
How are you
That's
going
what's
to pay
important.
for the 6 to 7%?
I believe that we should relook at our budget within the general fund and do that.
How are you going to do it? What are you going to do? What are you going to cut? Are you going to raise taxes? What are you going to do?
I'm not going to raise taxes, John. You keep saying I'm going to raise taxes. I didn't say I was going to raise taxes.
Well, you said you think
the
museums are less important.
I said that they're not more important. That they're not more important than public employees. That's what I said.
Well, how are you going to pay for it?
We have a growth in McAllen that's unprecedented. We have moved from the 4th fastest growing area in the country to the 3rd fastest growing area in the country. The reassessment of appraised value of homes has increased us and kept us at our 2nd lowest rate in the state of Texas. That will increase again, and we will have the money to make the efforts for the public employees.
Ron, let me just make one point here. There's an article here I have from the El Paso Times, February 12, 2007. The El Paso Police and Firefighters Pension Fund is facing a long-term deficit of $350 million, and fixing it is going to cost taxpayers $200 million. That's why I think it's important how you answer how you're going to pay for it.
Is that based on a 6 to 7% increase in pension? Explain the rest of the letter, John, because you're failing to give all the truths. The half-truths are coming from you, not from me.
I'm asking you how
I have the same memo.
How are you going to pay for it?
Through the general fund, just like you pay for it now.
Are you going to cut in services? Or
no, the increase in assessed values in the McAllen and the growth that we have will offset those costs. And you know that the growth is there.
How much is that going to be?
How much, who was the #1 city in construction in the Rio Grande Valley? McAllen, Texas. Who has said that we are the richest city in the Rio Grande Valley? Mayor Cortez. We have the money available for him. This has become a contest between 2 people against 1 union president that's affecting all of our employees, all public employees. When I, as a public employee for the city of FAR, have better benefits in the city of McAllen, I have a problem with that.
Any closing comments on either one of those circumstances?
Just a point, Ron. The police and fire are unionized, and the city
because they have collective bargaining, they're unionized.
Right, and we're not opposed to the unions. And as far as police and firemen go, I think that they deserve the very best benefits that the city can afford. They work hard. For example, for the police, crime's down by 5%, rapes down 55%, burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft are down 35%. The problem is we raised $23 million in property taxes, and to run the police department, it costs $26 million. We're doing our best in the city to keep a balanced budget and not raise taxes. When you put in 6% towards your pension and the city doubles that to 12%, I don't see where you get that anywhere in private industry. And I would say that we need to balance the needs of the police with the taxpayers' ability to pay for it.
I'm going to cover some other issues. Do both of you commit not to use politiqueras during this campaign? That was a big factor in the election cycle 2 years ago. Do either one of you plan to use politiqueras in your campaign?
No.
Politiqueras, let me tell you something, Ron.
Are you going to use politiqueras, yes or no?
Yes, my wife is a politiquera, and she's helping me. Her PTA friends are politiqueras. They're advocates for elected to get the vote out. Let me tell you something.
They got a real bad.
Because
they got a real bad name.
Just like liberalism has become a bad.
Because some of them abused the system.
Because exactly, some of it bad.
And some money changed hands for votes.
Politics isn't
both
bad.
were bought and sold in the last election cycle. And so that's a bad situation.
Well, here's the
so
problem.
You're going to use politiqueras, and your wife's a politiquera.
Well,
and he's not going to use them.
I'm just
saying
that the term politiquera is to advocate for votes. And let me tell you something. For the first time in 3 cycles, the city of McAllen fell from 22% to 17% in turnout. That's why I have a problem with that. Raised medians are also concerned, and that's why we need to get the vote out to make sure that we protect children.
On camera number 3, we want to show this sign, raised median. That's an issue that both of these candidates are differing on. Raised median. You've seen these signs up and down Atlanta, in the city of McAllen. Many citizens in that area, many business people, particularly along that thoroughfare in the city of McAllen, are opposed to TxDOT's putting in a raised median to provide some amount of a barrier along that thoroughfare. You're in favor of that. Mr. Padilla, explain your favoring that.
Ron, I'm going to give you something that John won't give you. It's 11 economic impact studies that were done throughout the state of Texas. One wasn't done in the Valley. My opponent wants to do one here.
This deals with the median?
With the medians.
Okay.
And let me tell you something. In this economic impact study, where the only difference between 50,000 cars a day between us and El Paso, San Antonio, Fort Worth, anywhere is climate. It's the same type of traffic patterns. People trying to get to work, people trying to get their kids to school. All those studies will tell you that business owners will tell you that they're safer for kids are crossing, and that they don't lose money. There's only 2 types of industries that lose money: gas stations and auto repair shops. Sit-down restaurants and fast food chains make more money. City of McAllen did a study with the state comptroller's office, and that's what he won't tell you either. And Edinburgh, before and after, 27% increase in sales. So this notion that you'll lose money and that it'll be less safer for kids is false.
Raised medians, Mr. Ingram, where do you stand?
Ron, I'm pro-neighborhood and pro-business. You can't have one without the other. We had a forum. Mr. Medina was one of the very few who spoke in favor of the median, and we must have had 200 people there. The principal of Milam School is not in favor of these medians. I'm concerned that—
So you're opposed to the median?
I'm opposed to the medians because I think it's going to force traffic into neighborhoods where we don't have enough sidewalks, and children will be put in harm's way. And it's also bad for business. And if you have any question of that, talk to the businessmen on Nolana who testified at this hearing that we had. You know, these are smart businessmen. They're saying it's going to hurt their business. Don, who's never run a business in his life, seems to think he's smarter than they are.
You know, I think that it's been important to find out that most of the people were there at this the majority of the people at this public hearing that were against medians were business owners, not residents. Because the residents that I speak to understand, because they live there, and since John's kids don't go to our public school, it doesn't understand that the cars are going through our neighborhoods right now.
Was the principal of Milam School there?
Yes, she was.
Did she speak against the median?
Because she's been given false information from people that the special interests that are supporting you.
Now, in preparing for this telecast, we did check around the city of McAllen and see what some of the citizens were asking. And one of the things that they were asking were of you, Mr. Medina, and that is they were asking if Rick Godinez in any way involved is asking you to run in preparation for a potential run again against Mayor Cortez in the election cycle 2 years hence.
Well, if you go by his house, and he's John's neighbor as well, you'll see that he has no signs of mine. Rick is not in this race at all. This is my race. My race for the people of McAllen. You know, we talk about that you can't have good business in neighborhoods. Yes, you can. It's talk about having a balance. You know, it's one thing to talk about planning and doing things. It's one thing to do it. And I've been doing it for 11 years for the Valley, helping cities from Port Isabel to Rio Grande City. Now I just want to help the city that I live in. And what's important to understand is that false information is what hurts our city. And having an open and honest government is what I'm about.
John, 1 minute. Look at the camera and look at the voter from McAllen, your district, hopefully, and tell them why you won't think you ought to be reelected.
Well,
in English or Spanish or both?
No, pues entonces como, well, no, let me go ahead and speak in English. I speak fluent Spanish, though. As far as the medians go, I'm representing the interests of the people who live in District 5 who testified at that conference and indicated they were not in favor of the medians. I have experience in business. I've run my own law firm for 7 years. I do Social Security disability work. I have had 8 to 12 employees at any one time during that 7 years. I don't know if Mr. Medina has been able to keep a job from that period of time. I know he's worked for several cities, but he's not maintained those jobs.
Time, Mr. Ingram, Mr. Medina.
You know, I think it's important that we understand that we tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. You know, yes, I haven't owned a business, but I've run businesses. The McAllen Glass South, a lot of people in McAllen know me, that they know that I had to cover a payroll for 20 people. They know that I've had to manage 45 people for the city of FAR. Yo estoy para la gente de aquí, de la comunidad, no para los negocios que están ganando de la gente. Yo quiero ser su comisionado de aquí de McAllen.
Two candidates who want to be your next city commissioner in District 5, one incumbent re-election, one seeking one seat, the sitting incumbent. Election day again, May 12th, City of McAllen and many communities here in South Texas. Thank you for joining us. Please get out and vote. Till next time, adios.